Whiskey distiller Jack Daniel died after kicking his safe because he forgot his combination. He injured his big toe and it got infected, so he had to have his foot amputated. But the infection spread to the rest of his system and he died from complications. On 9/11, there was only one American in space. And this is the photo he took from the International Space Station. The first person to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge was a professional high diver. He wanted to demonstrate that people don't die simply from falling through the air, and he was correct. He fell 135 feet through the air without a problem, but hitting the water killed him immediately. Josephine Myrtle was born in 1868 with a rare genetic anomaly known as dipagus. Her body was completely normal down to the waist, but below it she had 2 pelvises and 4 legs. This is what toilets looked like in many medieval castles. There were a few cases of assassins climbing up these poop chutes and waiting for their targets to sit down before killing them. In 1977, the drummer for Lynyrd Skynyrd survived the plane crash that killed half the band. He then walked to a nearby house for help only to be shot by the homeowner. He apparently saw a bloody long-haired man and fired a warning shot that hit the drummer in the shoulder. Once Pyle shouted that there was a crash, the farmer helped him and he went on to fully recover. When Bono was 14, his mother suffered an aneurysm at her own father's funeral and later died. Bono said the grief in his heart at the time was a big part of why he turned to music. A German shepherd named Tommy attends Mass every day at his local church in Italy. This is because his owner had her funeral there and he hopes that one day she will return. Australian vegan Maria Stridham wanted to prove that vegans can do anything by climbing Mount Everest. Sadly, she died while descending as a result of severe altitude sickness. In 1929, 2 scientists at Princeton University successfully turned a live cat into a telephone. They connected its auditory nerve to a transmitter, and when one researcher spoke through the cat's ear, the other could hear it through the receiver. The experiment was viewed as groundbreaking and led to the invention of cochlear implants. Sloths only have enough energy for their weekly toilet trip to the jungle floor. So if their baby ever falls to the ground, they must choose to preserve their energy and leave it to be eaten. A San Francisco man tweeted this just 5 minutes before being the victim of a random drive-by shooting. In 2015, a Colombian man had a tapeworm inside of him that got cancer. The cancer then metastasized and the man eventually died from tumors of tapeworm throughout his entire body. A 24-year-old nurse in India was set on fire by her ex-boyfriend after she rejected his advances. But police say the woman caught hold of him tightly so that he couldn't escape after killing her. While the woman died on the spot, the man suffered for days before succumbing to his injuries during treatment. 8,500 feet up the slope of Mount Everest, a creepy marker serves as a guide for climbers. Known as the Green Boots, everyone approaching the summit from the north side must pass by Suang Paljor's body. It's seen as a milestone because it's an indication of just how close one is to the top of the mountain. A 17-year-old boy from Mexico City died after his girlfriend gave him a hickey. The suction resulted in a blood clot that traveled to the brain, eventually causing a stroke. In 2003, David and Tina Watson were scuba diving on their honeymoon in the Great Barrier Reef. When currents became too rough, David, an experienced diver, swam to the surface while his wife struggled in panic. This photo captures Tina lying helplessly on the sea floor in her final moments before drowning. In the original story of Peter Pan, Peter murders members of the Lost Boys when they grow too old. He did this because being an adult was against the rules in Neverland. In the middle of battles with pirates, Peter would also switch sides to kill members of the Lost Boys just for fun. Up until the 1800s, Turkish women who were accused of cheating on their husbands were tied up in a sack filled with cats, then thrown in the ocean. In 1977, 20-year-old Colleen Stan was kidnapped while hitchhiking in California. She was locked in a box the size of a coffin under her kidnapper's bed for 7 years. She had to lie still and couldn't make any noise for 23 hours a day in pitch-black darkness. Her kidnapper was only caught when his wife finally reported him to police. The death of Metallica singer James Hetfield's mom inspired him to write the song The God That Failed. She died when he was 16 due to Christian beliefs influencing her to reject cancer treatment. In 1999, a waitress was tipped a lottery ticket and won $10 million. She was then sued by her colleagues for their share. Afterwards, she was sued by the man who tipped her the ticket. Then she was kidnapped by her ex-husband and ended up shooting him in the chest. Lastly, she went to court against the IRS for more than a decade before finally winning. In 1825, painter Samuel Morse received a letter which read that his wife was sick. The next day, he received a new letter which read that she had died. 2 days later, he went to see his wife one last time only to discover she had already been buried. Distraught over the slowness of long-distance communication, he invented the Morse code. As horrible as the Holocaust was, one man truly stood out as one of the most evil of all Nazis involved. Dr. Joseph Mengele was tasked with conducting genetic research on human subjects at Auschwitz concentration camp. His work focused primarily on twins, with very little regard for the safety or suffering of his patients. Some of his horrific experiments included removing organs without anesthesia, injecting toxic dye into eyeballs, and even sewing twins together at the skin. Most of his patients ended up dying after these operations, but those who didn't often wish they had. What's perhaps most disturbing is that after the Holocaust, Dr. Mengele escaped to South America, where many say he continued his brutal experiments in a less organized manner. He lived for more than 30 years after the end of the war and died on a beach in Brazil. Snake wine has been considered a therapeutic alcoholic beverage for thousands of years in China. It is produced by infusing venomous snakes in grain alcohol and is said to reinvigorate a person. This abandoned fawn was found curled up next to a fake deer that was used for target practice. This is a 1964 photo of Black Reverend Joe Carter preparing to face the Klan after he tried to vote. During tests in South Korea, access to all rooftops are typically locked. This is because students have been known to throw themselves off the roof due to the pressure of the exam. In 2005, one sheep decided to jump off a cliff, causing nearly 1,500 others to follow. However, only the first 450 were killed since the remaining animals' falls were cushioned by the dead bodies below. This is a photo of Otto Warmbier begging for mercy while on trial for stealing a propaganda poster in North Korea. He returned to the US with irreversible brain damage and died 6 years later. This is the crevice where Aaron Ralston cut off his own arm to free himself after being trapped by a massive boulder. He did it using nothing but a dull pocket knife, and the movie 127 Hours is based on his triumph. During a 1998 soccer match in the Republic of Congo, a lightning bolt struck one of the goal pitches. It killed all 11 members of the home team, who were all wearing metal spikes. The other team was left completely unscathed, for they had all been wearing rubber cleats. When Teddy Roosevelt was 25, his wife and his mother both died on Valentine's Day, just hours apart from each other. For his diary entry that day, he drew a large black X and wrote, "The light has gone out of my life." When some whales get old, they no longer have the strength to swim for long distances. So if they swim too deep, they might not have enough strength to reach the surface for air and eventually suffocate to death. Throughout your life, you're more likely to meet a future murderer than you are to have a lasting marriage. In 2010, a homeless man named Hugo saved a woman from a knife attack in New York City. He was stabbed while trying to help, but still chased the attacker before collapsing from his wounds. Security cams captured more than 20 people walking past and staring at him, but no one offered to help. He was found dead on the sidewalk more than an hour later. After donating blood for the first time, a 21-year-old Canadian woman has lost the ability to move her right arm. The nurse accidentally drew blood from an artery instead of a vein, causing damage that was permanent. During his reign, Genghis Khan killed so many people that it was actually good for the environment. The 40 million or so deaths he was responsible for dropped the Earth's carbon levels by an estimated 700 million tons. Morgan Freeman says he always wears his earrings because they're worth just enough to pay for a coffin if he happened to die in a strange place. Back in the 1500s, doctors thought that cutting open infants' gums would encourage their teeth to grow. Unfortunately, many of these children ended up dying due to severe mouth infections. Steve Jobs could have avoided a premature death from cancer by having it properly treated. Instead, he refused surgery for 9 months and favored dietary treatments and other alternatives. Shortly before he died, he claimed that it was one of his biggest life regrets. With a 9% fatality rate, being the president is by far the most dangerous job in America. Hours before his death, Edgar Allan Poe was acting delirious in the streets of Baltimore. He was wearing another man's clothing and was unable to explain how he got there. While many ideas have been put forth, his cause of death remains a mystery to this day. In 1991, Patricia Stallings was sentenced to life in prison for poisoning her child with antifreeze. She then gave birth to a second child while in prison, who was given to a foster care. But he eventually became sick with the same symptoms as the first child, indicating a rare metabolic disorder, not poisoning. This proved her innocence and she was later released. In a Mexican prison in 2020, 2 rival drug cartels decided to have a friendly soccer match. Things must have gotten out of hand pretty quickly since the match ended with 16 people dead. In 1975, it was revealed that the CIA had developed a heart attack gun that fired a dart of frozen water and shellfish toxin. Once inside the body, it would melt, leaving only a small red mark on the victim. The official cause of death would always be a heart attack. In December of 1980, a 19-year-old girl from Minnesota was involved in a car accident in sub-zero temperatures. After the crash, her car wouldn't start, so she walked towards a friend's house who lived 2 miles away. When she was just 15 feet from her friend's front door, she collapsed. That night, temperatures dropped to negative 30 degrees Celsius, and no one was around to help her. 6 hours later, she was discovered frozen solid. She was immediately transported to a nearby hospital, but her skin was too hard to even pierce with a needle. Amazingly, she was still alive, but her pulse was only measured at 12 beats per minute. Hoping for a miracle, doctors wrapped her in a heated blanket, and 2 hours later, she regained consciousness. After 49 days in the hospital, she completely recovered and suffered no permanent damage to any part of her body. In 2010, the body of Argentinian model Joana Casas was found just before her 20th birthday. She had been shot twice in the head and was left in a field. Her former boyfriend was soon convicted of the murder and sentenced to 13 years in prison. 3 years later, while still in prison, the man ended up falling in love with Joanna's twin sister Edith. Despite her parents intervening, Edith went on to marry her twin sister's murderer. In 2008, a Kansas man named Corey McFerrin called 911 claiming there was something wrong with his girlfriend. When authorities arrived, they were horrified to find that his 35-year-old girlfriend had been sitting on the toilet for at least 2 years. Her skin had grown around the toilet seat and had to be surgically removed at the hospital. Her boyfriend claimed that because of her troubled childhood, she felt safe in the bathroom and never left. In 2009, a Russian man named Artyom Sidorkin went to the doctors suspecting something wrong with his lungs. Initially, doctors thought they were dealing with a tumor, but it ended up being something they had never seen before. It turned out that years ago, he inhaled the seed of a fir tree and it started growing inside of him. Pigs have been known to feast on just about anything. There are even stories of pigs breaking into farmhouses and eating newborn babies. The ship that inspired the story of Moby Dick was named the Essex. After being shipwrecked by a sperm whale, the crew avoided stepping foot on surrounding islands out of fear of cannibals. But because of this bypass, the men soon ran out of food and were forced to eat each other for survival. Author of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, is said to have lost her virginity on top of her mother's grave. She also kept her dead husband's heart and carried it around for 30 years until her death in 1851. In North Korea, viewing or selling porn is strictly forbidden and is said to be punishable by death. If you win the lottery, you're about 20 times more likely to be murdered than the average person. In 2016, a seemingly abandoned yacht drifted towards some fishermen off the coast of the Philippines. But when they boarded the ship, they found the mummified remains of a German man who had been missing for 7 years. To this day, the man's cause of death remains a mystery. This is a photo of Princess Diana consoling Elton John at the funeral of Gianni Versace. Just over a month later, Diana would die in a car accident and Elton would perform at her funeral. Jean Calment lived to the age of 122 and was the oldest living human in history. She smoked cigarettes for 96 years from the age of 21 and only decided to quit 5 years before she died. If you're ever bitten or scratched by a wild animal, go get a rabies shot immediately. The way rabies kills, once you show symptoms, there's no way to treat it and you will almost certainly die. In 1957, a woman attending an MLB game was hit with a foul ball that broke her nose. The game was briefly paused and resumed once the woman was put on a stretcher. As they carried her away, the very next pitch was fouled off and hit the same woman, breaking a bone in her knee. You can literally die from pooping too hard, and it's actually pretty common. Nearly all cases involve people with bad hearts, who just pushed a little too hard. One of the most notable people who died this way is Elvis Presley. Up until the 1950s, cigarettes were used to treat people with asthma along with other pulmonary conditions. 30 years ago, you had about 17 minutes to escape a house fire. Today, that's down to about 3 to 4 minutes due to many of the highly flammable synthetic materials used in furniture. After a mass shooting, you would expect complete silence at the scene of the crime. But police say one of the eeriest things is all of the phones that ring when family members are trying to find out if their loved ones are okay. In 1856, a woman died just after giving birth to a Greek monk named Mihailo Tolotos. The very next day, the baby was taken to a monastery on top of Mount Athos. He then spent his entire 82-year life completely isolated from women. He's the only known man in history to have lived and died without ever seeing a woman. While this may look like a regular city upon first glance, it's actually the world's largest cemetery. Located in Iraq, the Valley of Peace contains over 5 million bodies. Joseph Matheny was a serial killer from Baltimore who was active from the 1970s till the 1990s. Following his arrest, Joseph not only confessed to killing numerous men and women, he also claimed that he used their meat in the burgers that he sold out of his food truck. A teen boy injected himself with mercury at least 3 times while attempting to convert his bones into metal after watching X-Men Origins Wolverine. He was also intentionally bitten by spiders multiple times so that he could become Spider-Man. This endangered baby dolphin died shortly after this photo was taken because swimmers were passing it around for selfies. A man once threw a mouse into a pile of burning leaves. The mouse then ran into the man's home while still on fire and burned the entire house down. When people are electrocuted and thrown far distances, it is the result of sudden violent muscle contractions, not the shock itself. This has raised questions about the actual strength and subconscious capabilities of the muscles of the human body. 5 hours before he was confirmed to be dead, somebody posted about Michael Jackson's death on Wikipedia with nearly exact details. No one paid attention because everyone thought it was just a prank, so no details about the original poster were ever found. While masks may save human lives, the same can't be said for wildlife. In 2020 alone, an estimated 1.5 billion masks ended up in our oceans. A British teenager was arrested after beating and stabbing 2 girls because they called him Harry Potter. In 2009, a man sued Pepsi when he was traumatized after finding a mouse in his Mountain Dew. But Pepsi attorneys said this was impossible since Mountain Dew would completely dissolve a mouse in 30 days. Pepsi won the case upon showing that the can was purchased 74 days after it was manufactured. This is a comparison of a pug in 1880 versus what the breed looks like today. The pug was selectively bred to feature an extremely flat face, which has contributed to severe breathing difficulties as well as eye problems in many of these dogs. If a person dies on a plane during a flight, their body is typically moved to an empty first-class seat until the plane lands. After the Titanic disaster, the U.S. Congress passed a law requiring passenger vessels to carry more lifeboats. But the added weight made one ship called the SS Eastland too top-heavy. In 1915, the ship capsized before even leaving the dock, killing 844 people. In 1984, comedian Tommy Cooper died of a heart attack while performing live on stage. Thinking it was all part of the show, the audience continued to laugh and clap as the man was gasping for air. In 1300 BC, Egyptian King Meneptah defeated the Libyans in battle. To prove of his triumph, he brought back 6,000 tan bananas that he cut off of opposing soldiers. When a very tall man dies and can't afford a custom coffin, the undertaker will often chop off his feet and place them beside his legs. The family doesn't notice because only the top half of the coffin is open during the funeral. In 2015, a woman claimed that she could smell Parkinson's disease. To test this, doctors gave her 12 shirts to smell and 6 of them were from Parkinson's patients. She correctly identified the 6 shirts but also chose one from the control group. 8 months later, that person was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Pablo Picasso used to carry around a revolver loaded with blanks. And when people asked him about the meaning of his paintings, he would pretend to shoot them in the face. In 2012, 66-year-old Stevie Crecelius went to the hospital thinking he had a kidney stone. During that visit, he would find out that he actually had a strange condition and had been a woman his whole life. Nicolas Cage has already bought his grave, and it's a 9-foot-tall pyramid in Louisiana. Masabumi Hosono was the only Japanese passenger on the Titanic, and he managed to survive the sinking. But after returning to his home country, he was publicly condemned and lost his job for not going down with the other passengers. President JFK's brain has been missing from the National Archives for more than 50 years. Stanley Meyer was one of the first to invent a car that was completely powered by water. He claimed that it was capable of traveling across the country on just 72 liters of tap water, which would have revolutionized the auto industry and made gasoline obsolete. But shortly after creating the car, Stanley died while meeting with investors. His brother said he ran out of the restaurant choking, looked at him and said, "They've poisoned me." This is a photo of Anne Frank's father Otto revisiting the attic where they hid from the Nazis. Sadly, he was the only surviving member of the family as his 2 daughters died just weeks before their camp was liberated. In 1783, a boy was born with 2 heads, but one of the heads was upside down. Surprisingly, the other head was somewhat functional, and the boy even claimed that he could hear the other brain talking to him. Tigers are some of the most vengeful animals on the planet and will take revenge on anyone who has wronged them. In 1997, a Russian poacher shot a tiger and left him for dead before stealing part of his meal. The tiger later found the poacher's cabin and waited 12 hours for him to arrive before killing and eating him. In 1985, a black bear was found dead due to a cocaine overdose in a forest in Georgia. The bear had eaten 76 pounds of cocaine out of a duffel bag that fell from the plane of a drug smuggler. Shortly before dying, he was probably the most dangerous apex predator on the planet. This photo of a kidney stone under an electron microscope shows you why they're so painful. Grisly's son Brandon was accidentally killed on the set of The Crow when he was only 28 years old. A prop gun was loaded improperly, causing dummy bullets to fire at him with the same force as live ammunition. In 2014, Harvard University discovered that 2 books in their library were bound using human skin. One of the books is called Destinies of the Soul. In the book, the author wrote a note that said, "A book about the human soul deserved to have a human covering." George Washington died when his doctors were trying to cure his sore throat. They were using a process called bloodletting, which involved draining a patient's blood until their illness was cured. He lost nearly half his blood before they stopped the treatment, and he died just a few hours later. According to the FBI, if you're murdered in the US, there's only about a 40% chance that your murderer will be found and punished. When penguins can't find love, they often waddle off to die alone. An Iranian man named Amu Haji is known as the world's dirtiest man. The 80-year-old man hasn't showered in 65 years and claims that cleanliness makes man sick. He has survived off of eating rotten animal carcasses and smokes feces out of a pipe. He also lives in complete isolation, and yes, ladies, he's single. In the 1920s, not much was known about the effects of radium. So when a group of women were paid to use glow-in-the-dark radioactive paint, they were told that it was completely harmless. But after years of licking the tips of their paintbrushes while using this radium-based paint, the devastating effects eventually became obvious. Many of these women developed a condition known as radium jaw, which caused horrible tumors around the mouth, and some of their jaws would literally fall off. The ancient Romans would often substitute criminals into plays for punishment. So if a character died in the story, a real criminal would die on stage. The ancient Aztecs built swords out of obsidian, which is said to be 50 times sharper than surgical steel. These swords were apparently sharp enough to decapitate not only a human with one strike, but also a horse. In 1903, Topsy the elephant was executed by poisoning, strangulation, and electrocution. A 74-second video of the electrocution was recorded and preserved by Thomas Edison. It may have been the first time ever that death was captured in a motion picture film. In 1854, a 13-year-old boy died in San Francisco after a circus clown swung him around by the heels. A Frenchman named Tarare was famous in the 1700s for his endless appetite. He was reported to have eaten live snakes, cats, lizards, and puppies. In one case, he ate a meal intended for 15 people in a single sitting. While being treated in a hospital for his condition, he was caught trying to drink other patients' blood and eat corpses from the morgue. After being suspected of eating a toddler, he was ejected from the hospital. In her Firefox search history, Casey Anthony had foolproof suffocation methods from the day before her daughter died. But police overlooked this evidence because they only checked her search history from Internet Explorer. Throughout his life, Ernest Hemingway survived malaria, anthrax, pneumonia, dysentery, skin cancer, diabetes, hepatitis, a ruptured kidney, spleen, and liver, a crushed vertebrae, and a fractured skull. He also survived 2 separate plane crashes in a 2-day span while on an African safari. In 2013, a French businessman died of a heart attack while having an affair with a stranger during a company trip. A French court ruled that this was an industrial accident and that his wife and family were entitled to compensation. The scold's bridle was a device that was used to publicly humiliate women until the 19th century. On the inside, the device had a metal plate that would press down on the tongue and prevent the wearer from speaking. It was placed on women who were said to be troublesome to keep them quiet and prevent them from gossiping. This is a powerful photo of a starving Ugandan boy holding the hand of a missionary in 1980. For many years, the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd told his bandmates that he wouldn't live to the age of 30. His dad reported that even when he was a child, Ronnie would often say, "Daddy, I'll never be 30 years old." When his father asked why he kept saying this, Ronnie would just reply, "Daddy, that's my limit." Sure enough, when he was 29 years old, Ronnie Van Zant died in a plane crash. In 2012, a Jesus statue in India had water mysteriously dripping from its toes. Worshippers flocked from all over to collect and sometimes drink this miracle water. But soon enough, the source of the water was found to be a clogged toilet near the statue. After the Tiananmen Square massacre, the Chinese government sent bills to the families of the protesters for the cost of the bullets used to kill their loved ones. Over the last 10 years, about 10 Americans have been accidentally shot by dogs. 5 of them happened in Florida. Jeremy Rodale was a longevity expert who popularized the term organic food. While filming an interview for the Dick Cavett Show, he declared, "I've decided to live to be 100 and I've never felt better in my life." But minutes later, Rodale died of a heart attack while still being filmed. If you don't want wrinkles but would prefer to stay away from Botox, this woman has a solution for you. To avoid wrinkles, Tess Christian claims to have not laughed or smiled for more than 40 years, even after the birth of her daughter. The individual animal with the most human kills ever was a tiger from northern India. After a tooth injury from a gunshot left her unable to hunt normal prey, she adjusted her hunting style to go for humans instead. She was shot and killed in 1907 with an estimated 436 human kills. Jeannie Wiley was locked in a room for 13 years by her father, who wanted to protect her from the outside world. He kept her tied in a straitjacket and would bark at her like a wild dog if she made any noise. When she was finally rescued, doctors said she had the cognitive abilities of a 1-year-old baby. While getting into character for the Jobs movie, Ashton Kutcher tried Steve Jobs' diet, but he ended up in a hospital because it messed with his pancreas levels. It's likely no coincidence that Steve Jobs died from pancreatic cancer. Albert Einstein's last words were lost forever because he said them in German, which the nurse attending to him did not speak. The disclaimer of no animals were harmed during the making of this film isn't always true. It can be put on movies even if animals died during the production, as long as cameras weren't rolling at the time. The Heart Attack Grill is a restaurant in Las Vegas where people weighing over 350 pounds can eat for free. 3 people have died while eating there, and the only vegan option on the menu is cigarettes. In 2009, actor Dean Winters suffered from a bacterial infection and died in the ambulance but was revived. After recovering, he developed gangrene and had multiple amputations and skin grafts. He is now better known for playing Mayhem in Allstate insurance commercials. Janis Joplin changed her will just 2 days before dying at the age of 27. She gave her estate to her parents and gave additional cash to her siblings. She even set aside $2,500 for her friends to throw a party in her honor and to, quote, get blasted after I'm gone. Cat burning was a form of entertainment in France prior to the 1800s. People would gather cats in a net and burn them over a bonfire while they laughed and cheered. This was done mainly because cats were associated with witchcraft and were burned as symbols of the devil. This photo was taken on the morning of April 15th, 1912, just a few miles south of where the Titanic went down. The steward who took the photo had not yet heard about the sinking of the Titanic. What caught his attention was the smear of red paint across the base of the iceberg, indicating that it had collided with a ship. Little did he know there were about 1,500 dead bodies in the depths below him. In 1962, a Cuban boxer named Benny Perret made fun of his opponent Emil Griffith for being a homosexual. Griffith ended up beating Perret so badly that he fell into a coma and died 10 days after the fight. In 2007, a woman woke up in the middle of a surgery where doctors were removing one of her eyes. She was aware of everything going on for hours but couldn't tell the doctors to stop. She says the experience was so horrific that she thought she had died and gone to hell. In 1979, the King of Persia ordered the execution of 2 servants for being too loud. But since it was a holiday, he postponed their executions by 1 day and made the servants return to their duties. That night, they assassinated the king in his sleep. The FBI estimates that there are between 25 and 50 active serial killers in the US at any given time. When a person is executed by electric chair, they feel everything. They are fully aware of their bodies being fried as it happens in real time. One inmate who survived the first round of electrocution said it tasted exactly like cold peanut butter. A Japanese schoolgirl once died because a teacher crushed her head in the school gate. The principal said it was the student's fault because the gate had to be closed at exactly 8:30 and she was late.